I have been covering Total War Warhammer for 5 years this coming March, almost lined up perfectly with the launch of Warhammer 2. I've seen launches, DLCs, delays, everything. And in that time, I've grown to really be able to assess or see a pattern in a lot of the ways that information is disseminated. Not only for me as a content creator, but to the community as a whole. One thing that keeps standing out time and time again is a big issue I've found with the marketing of the Total War series by Creative Assembly. Now, before you go picking up your pitchforks and stoking the flames of rebellion, I'm not looking to attack the company or any one individual. A lot of these people are my friends, and I've shared a pint with them at the touchstone of British culture, Wetherspoons. Instead, I like to bring up issues I see with the current system and marketing run, and some constructive criticism to help alleviate the tension on both ends of the spectrum. I read all of your comments every day, and I try to respond to most, but I have a good sense for how the community feels right now. Agitated and restless are two words that do come to mind, and I'm sure this is a sentiment that is felt internally with certain portions of CA as well. I mean, I don't know, I haven't talked to anyone, but I don't think anyone is happy with delaying launches, information, or marketing reveals. So in this video today, I want to bring up some occasions in the past that have created a bit of friction between the community and CA. Then we'll discuss some options to make the impact of these occurrences less impactful. And this is very much outside of my normal purview when it comes to videos. I try to focus on the positive side of almost anything. So me talking about this subject should tell you how much I believe it will help and change things for the better. Now, please keep in mind, too, guys, I'm just a dude who runs a YouTube channel. I do not have some deep insight into the business world of the gaming industry. I have zero idea what the P&L or profit and loss looks like for a company like CA and how delays affect them. I'm speaking as an impassioned fan, not some dude with the inside scoop. And that's also worth mentioning. Obviously, I have had information or products ahead of their launch as part of my role as a content partner for CA. And with that, I operate under an NDA. I can tell you, though, that any information I know as of the creation of this video, you all know as well. And I just felt like that was worth saying. So before we get started, and in my typical fashion of upfronting the knowledge in my videos, let me give you a loose summary of what I'll be talking about. We're going to go into some of the previous marketing issues that have happened in the past, such as the Norska incident, the second Wood Elf DLC, and what have you. Then we'll talk about the current Warhammer 3 marketing run and conclude the video talking about some possible solutions. And really the big standout issue here is a lack of transparency, or giving a loose timeline followed by long spans of radio silence, again, linking back to transparency. This entire video can be summed up in one sentence. If there is a delay, something happens, or things just aren't up to the standard, let the community know sooner rather than later. It's like being in a relationship and something happens, or something, quote unquote, and every day out from that initial conflict only deepens the resentment. When we get swept away in hype, that resentment the community feels towards past slights doesn't get a chance to get resolved because the hype is treated as a solution rather than a clear, transparent communication that tells us how or why something went wrong and a loose date of when we can expect things to be resolved. Now, I'm not expecting any game company to roll out their entire release and launch schedule, but when something is promised quote unquote soon or within a month, just a simple bit of communication saying it has been pushed back and we'll be discussing X, Y, and Z, whatever it is, would go a long way to making things a lot easier and more palatable to deal with. And we'll go into more solutions in the section, but that's your quick breakdown of what we'll be getting into. So let's talk about how Creative Assembly should change its marketing. So going into some of the past issues that have come up with Warhammer 2 at least, one of the big things that came out in just December, right? This is scant months after the launch back in September of Warhammer 2. There was an issue where Norska, which was the pre-order race for Warhammer 2, was not playable in Warhammer 2 at the time of launch, where it was promised originally to be so. Now, again, this is 3 months after the launch of the game, where we were told, hey, Norska can be played in Warhammer 2. So here we have December 5th, 2017. We have Rob and Mike breaking down the issues with Norska, pretty much saying that it was written in a code format that matched a Warhammer 1 patch that was way before even the end of Warhammer 1, and Warhammer 2's code as a whole had changed. So basically they needed to do a whole entire code reformat. I can't remember the actual name of it. But basically bring all the code from Norska up to the Warhammer 2 standards, and then it will actually slot into the game properly. The issue was it was not slotting as a result, and it wouldn't integrate into Mortal Empires, and it just created a huge issue for them. Now, this came in December, and as a whole, people pretty much said, oh, great. It sucks that we don't have it, but I'm glad I now know what the issue is, because a lot of people are saying, where's Norska? Where's Norska? On anything Creative Assembly did. If they made a video post for Empire Divided, because they had Rome 2 with Empire Divided, all sorts of stuff coming out. They had the Halo 2 Wars coming out in February. Stuff was going all over the place with CA. If they had just said, hey, this is what was happening back in, I mean, obviously in September when the game came out, they're probably going to spend some weeks to try and figure out, hey, maybe we can just get this done and pop it in. No big deal. But clearly now in December, they've realized it's going to take a longer time. If that had been a communication in the beginning of October, I'll even say, right? Giving the rest of September month as a chance to try and fix it and put it into the game, people would not have spammed Thrones of Britannia and everything like that with where's Norska, so on and so forth. So having that level of transparency would have been fine, because the ultimate response from the community was, okay, cool. I mean, I'm using hyperbole here to tell you that it was, for the most part, widely accepted. People said, okay, as long as it's done right, that's all I care about. But for the most part, as long as that communication is done, people seem to be okay with those sentiment. And moving into another example here, we have the most recent Wood Elf DLC, The Twisted in the Twilight, that came out in December 3rd of 2020, the very end of the year. This was preceded by the Eltharion DLC that came out in April or May of that same year. But we got a blog in July of 2020 kind of breaking down what was going on with everything, right? Saying, hey, here's what's up with Troy, here's what's up with Warhammer 2, Three Kingdoms, rest in peace, all sorts of things. And in the blog, it says, it kind of breaks out how the DLC and FLC will be affecting those who own Warhammer 2, Warhammer 2 and Warhammer 1, Warhammer 2 and Warhammer 1, and those who also own the Realm of the Wood Elves DLC. But at the very end of this entry, they say, don't worry, we'll be announcing it properly soon, and we'll have plenty of very clear info on what you get depending on which games you own. So this was announced again in July of 2020. The announcement for the Twisted in the Twilight did not happen until November 19th. Now, I have no doubt that there was some sort of issue with maybe the development of the DLC. Maybe there was an issue with Warhammer 3 and they decided to push back the release of Warhammer 3 and make this DLC appear later in Warhammer 2's life cycle. I don't know, right? I'm not on the inside. But just simply saying maybe in July, hey, we had a plan on doing a proper announcement soon, ran into some technical difficulties with development of something or another with COVID, because remember, this is right in the midst of lockdown throughout the UK, and we'll be pushing back the announcement of this DLC to a later date. That's it. That's all you really have to do, right? You don't even need to give a date, but just saying, like, rather than saying soon, which implies to me same month, if not a full month away, you are creating this kind of superficial timeline that people will latch onto, especially in the Total War Warhammer community, where there are large spans of time in between individual DLCs, news, information, content drops, as it were. Don't even get me started if you're a historical fan. So being that little bit of transparent is going to make it so much easier and more palatable for people to deal with any kind of delay, because they just know that there's a delay. Rather than looking at any news site, the forums, the Reddit, the blog, YouTube, for any bit of information, any kernel of information, they can just say, oh, it's not coming anytime soon. I can stop looking for that stuff now. And another big thing too, of course, we know is Three Kingdoms and how that whole thing was handled. Again, a simple, actual, like, PR release after the fact saying, like, hey, we've decided to take it in a whole different direction. You can expect things like X, Y, and Z. We can't give you a lot of information right now because we're still very heavily in the conceptual design portion of the game, or wherever they are in the game, right? Something that kind of gives you some sense of, hey, it's going to be all right. That's an important thing, is that transparency creates comfort, and comfort is what allows you to be okay with things taking longer than they should, or you know, my package was delayed, but they at least told me when it's going to be coming. Whatever it is, you get some sort of resolution. Being up in the air does create a lot of tension. So let's jump now into the current marketing run with Warhammer 3. And with Warhammer 3, it's been a pretty wild ride. In February, we got the actual announcement, the CG trailer, everything. Then in March, we got more action from the actual gameplay of the game. Then we jump, into May, we got Enter the World of Kislev. Then we got in June, we got the Silence and the Fury, kind of interrupting a little bit of the Warhammer 3 news cycle, but we got Enter the World of Kislev. So things were on a very strong trajectory, right? Enter the World of Kislev, I'm sorry, Enter the World of Khorne happened June 4th, followed by the roster reveals June 15th, and the Khorne roster reveal June 17th. Now, the big issue with these two is that they came, almost a month and a half after actually seeing gameplay of these rosters, and a lot of people bringing up questions saying, hey, is this the entire roster that we see in the Brass Citadel gameplay that we saw that all of the other content creators had access to, and we finally got some gameplay of Warhammer 3? Is this the entirety of the roster? And we were told really that there's going to be a reveal. You'll see the whole roster soon. And the rosters themselves were not necessarily a letdown, but someone should have just said, yeah, it's pretty much the whole roster minus a couple of units. That's it. Like, the reveals themselves didn't bring a whole ton of new units to the table, which was pretty disappointing. For me, I was very disappointed with the Kislev roster, mainly because of the slim mount options and the roster itself being pretty much exactly what we played in the gameplay. So, like I said, transparency, just saying, hey, yeah, this is what the roster is for the most part, minus a couple things here and there. Now we kind of fast forward to the big thing here in July that jumps us into pretty much the break of news from the pattern of news that we've been getting up to this point into where we're at now. Now, let's be fair here. Silence and the Fury did come out in between all this action, right? We had Silence and the Fury announced during the Skulls for Skulls Throne event on June 4th, and then that whole release and marketing schedule had to take and run its course, so it's natural that we would kind of see Warhammer 3's marketing kind of subside a little bit here and there. And then we kind of go through July and then through August, now into September. In this July post, we get, the telling that we will be having some more information later in September. Also, we'll be getting some information on the early adopter bonus. So to kind of make a really quick discrepancy here, or I'm sorry, discrepancy, but distinction, I had thought the early adopter bonus was coming in September. It was not. I guess shortly after we come back, we'll also be fulfilling your hunger for the early adopter bonus with news of what will contain. So that's saying like shortly after we get news of whatever the news is in September. So again, now jump into September. We have got Grand Cathay. And what we've had since September 14th up to this point, which is when I'm recording this video, should be 14 days. I'm recording on the 28th. 14 days of really the same thing, more or less, over and over, with no mention of the actual Bastion, no mention of the siege mechanics that were hinted about in the September release window from the July newsletter, saying, hey, this is what we're going to really be covering in September. And no roster reveal, nothing like that outside of the really awesome badass trailer. Like, let me be very transparent too in saying that while I am frustrated with some of the marketing choices, I'm stoked as hell for Warhammer 3. Couldn't be more excited. But again, 14 days of really pretty much radio silence, with us coming up to the end of September with no Bastion, no siege mechanics, nothing. Now, we do also have to consider that Games Workshop obviously is going to have a hand in some of these releases and some of this information out, as they've also released a lot of lore on their own website, on the Games Workshop Warhammer community website. And they seem to have taken away some of them, not away, but they seem to have also said, hey, you know what? You're going to save these releases for the Skulls for Skulls Throne event. So it definitely seems that Creative Assembly this time around is not releasing marketing on their own accord. They're having to run it very heavily through Games Workshop, who seems to be doing a kind of tandem marketing campaign. So we're at this stage here before we jump into some solutions where we don't have this information, and what would really help is just transparency. Let's now jump into some of those solutions. And to just kind of beat a dead horse here, the biggest thing is transparency. I think that if Creative Assembly had just simply said, hey, you know what? We did plan on showing sieges in September. We're running into some technical issues because we want to be able to present something to you guys that isn't filled with bugs or isn't filled with whatever is causing the delay, right? Like, I don't know. We're going to have to push this into early October. Don't worry though, there's plenty of stuff to show you. Whatever it is, like I said, create comfort through transparency and validation of the information and news we want to hear. By simply just not saying anything, you create disparity. And like I said before, that disparity between when it was promised and when it is delivered creates resentment, and that resentment never gets resolved because that resentment always still exists after the hype kind of wipes away. So if Creative Assembly were to release another PR statement saying, hey, like I said before, we will not be doing X, Y, or Z, and instead, we're going to be moving it a little bit further down the road. We can't give you a concrete date, but these are the things we're going to be including for sure. And that way, you know what you'll be getting. You'll know it will be coming sooner rather than later. They won't have to lock into a certain date on their end, because that's always the thing, right? Marketing doesn't want to lock into a date that development can't deliver on, right? That's a dangerous kind of thing. So rather than saying things like, rather you'll hear about it soon, or in September, don't give a concrete date. Give us an actual timeline of saying like, hey, here's the 15 things we want to talk about in the marketing lineup for Warhammer 3 until its launch. We're going to do them in roughly this order. I can't give you an actual date of when we'll talk about them or a rough timeline of when we'll talk about them, but rest assured, these are the things we'll be talking about. If we happen to run out of time and we have to launch the game, so be it. You'll be able to actually experience those things. But I think if there's some sort of transparency as for what we can expect to know about, that would be great. Now, again, like I've said, a marketing team can't just simply tip their cards and say, here's all of what's in our game, just hold tight and we'll get to it. So you have to also kind of walk a thin line, right? Where there is some sort of hype behind it. You have to say stuff like the FLC arrays that we used to have in Warhammer 1 and 2, that kind of jumped the ghost in Warhammer 2 because they weren't too accurate, especially towards the end. But something where it's like, oh, what is this mysterious picture? Like if you showed me a blurred picture of a jade dragon prior to the information about Zhao Ming, I would have said, holy crap, there's another dragon. What could it possibly be? It creates hype. It creates speculation. It creates a lot of fun stuff. So if Creative Assembly were to take more of that FLC array approach of saying like, hey, here's some of the subjects we want to talk about. And it's a blurred picture of what looks like a wall and it just says siege mechanics. Another blurred picture of what looks like the Mountains of Morn and it says early adopter bonus. Another blurred picture and it says something like campaign map reveal. Another blurred picture and it says something again to the sort of chaos mechanics or campaign mechanics or chaos undivided rework. Well, whatever it is, if you create this expectation of cool things to come rather than having to create an actual timeline, I think it makes it a little bit easier for people to not wonder when the next thing is coming. If the next thing's coming is going to be a disappointment or whatever it is, right? You create an actual kind of set path of things that people can expect to hear about the game because they should expect to hear about campaign mechanics, early adopter bonuses, what's going to be in the game and the map and so on and so forth. So those are just some suggestions on how marketing can kind of reduce the impact of things like content droughts, product delays, information droughts, delays on information droughts, everything of the sort. So of course, I don't know what the inner workings of Creative Assembly are like, and I don't have all the right answers, but I just wanted to have a conversation about, here are some things that I've noticed as a member of the community and obviously as a content creator, and things that I think would obviously reduce that impact, things that would make it a lot easier for people to be okay with the situations going on or whatever they are. So go ahead and let me know in the comment section below how you feel about this. Are you perfectly fine with the ramp up with Warhammer 3 and what's been going on and with the information delved to you? Are you cool with the amount of lore coming out? Personally, I've loved all the lore, but because I'm a lore junkie and I've been playing Warhammer for like 20 plus years. So for me, it's really fun and exciting. But for a lot of people who just want to see mechanics and what they're going to be getting into with the game, I understand your frustration. So go ahead, like I said, let me know in the comment section below how you feel about this. But anything you're going to share, be measured in your response back. If you hit me with a ton of vitriol saying how pissed off you are, it's not going to help anyone. You have to approach anything like this with some measured of constructive criticism, because the people that are reading it are not the people making the decisions. Take Grace, for example, who is unfortunately no longer with Creative Assembly. She is, for the most part, just a messenger. She reads what you guys say. She can respond to what she can or could have responded to, and then she can relay that information back to the higher ups. They're the ones that make the decision. So anything that you kind of share on the forums, on Total Wars forums, on the Reddit, on comment sections of my videos or any other videos, try to take it with a measured approach, because that way you're going to get the best response. Any kind of overwhelming hostility is someone's just going to go, well, I'm going to dismiss that because it didn't help me. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. If you enjoyed this, please don't forget to like, comment, and or subscribe. Like I always say, I can't tell you how much that helps us out, us being any content creator you do watch. But as always, have a good one and take care.